Good evening. Yeah. So welcome to the second model on the explanation of Gaza, how to meditate. So yeah, English speaking here, and people online, and my Spanish friends in probably a warmer Spain than London, but yeah, it's a bit warm everywhere these days. Yeah. Okay, so before we start, as we elaborately talked about the importance of motivation and dedication, right? So also try today put it into practice that when we start the session, think you do it for a particular purpose, right? To understand meditation, so we know the meaning is to habituate yourself to positive patterns. Yeah, so try to generate that kind of motivation for yourself, that you're here together for that purpose, and try to think not only for yourself, but also try to think you can to try to have a wish to help others to achieve the same. Yeah, and that's one kind of universal motivation. A more Buddhist motivation will be in order to progress on the stages of the path to enlightenment and achieve the state of a Buddha, a fully awakened being, on all-knowing mind for the benefit of all sentient beings. Yeah, so try to generate either of those motivations for yourself. And if you like, you can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in front, the different masters of the different traditions of India, Tibet, and the other Buddhist traditions, for example. And surround yourself, you can imagine, your friends, your family, and people you don't know, and people you don't like, and all other beings, and think for that purpose you're here. How wonderful it will be to lead them beyond all forms of suffering and to make an auspicious connection in that direction. We imagine we lead them in the prayers, right? So then we recite the prayers together.
To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Sakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the indescribable, inconceivable, and inexpressible perfection of wisdom, unproduced, unceased, sailing, the nature of space, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom, to the mother of the victorious ones of the three times I prostrate. Tayatang gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha. Tayatang gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha. Tayatang gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha.
Sangye Judam Zoni Janju Badu Yagi Jinu Rola Penji Sangye
Rupasho Sangye Chura Savi Chanala Janju Badu Dani Kasuji Dagi Jinin Gibe Sonanki
Dola Penji Sangye Ruba Jo
Sangye Chura Savi Chanala Janju Badu Dani Kasuji Dagi Jinin Gibe Sonanki Rola Penchir Sangye Drupa
Yeah, so last time we went over that verse of taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So today I thought we go over the first verse, then also, in the coming period, what you recite. Yeah. So there it says, in praise to Sakyamuni Buddha, right? So Sakyamuni Buddha was like you and me before, wandering around in what we call samsara, or the cycle of birth, sickness, aging, and death. That's in short what we call the four rivers of suffering, samsara. Yeah, we come to that later when we talk about a model on the Four Noble Truths or samsara. Nirvana will come up. So that means, by the power of karma or cause and effect, we actually are beyond control, right? That's what happens to us. We're born, come out of the womb of the mother, and it's not always the baby never comes out singing a song or saying, "I'm so happy to be here." That always has some complications involved, right? So that's not a very pleasant thing at that particular time coming out. So that's suffering of birth. Then growing up, not knowing language, difficult to express. There's a few things there, and then quite a few. And then you grow up, and then what education you should do and what not, and you have friends, and friends become enemies, and enemies become friends. It's kind of, we know a little bit about the hassle of growing up, right? then you finish your education, but actually you want to do something else, or so then you find a job and you want to do another job. And then a partner, and then children, and you have the suffering of not having children, and then the suffering of having children. So that goes on for some time. Yeah, so that's what we call the suffering of birth. Sickness comes then also. Sickness is very interesting because it just happens to us, right? Beyond our control. And that's exactly what we talk about in Buddhism. Those kind of unwanted forms of suffering happens beyond control, right? We're not in control over those things. It just happens to us. So then the Buddha said, okay, what is the cause of all this? We have to solve this problem, if it's possible to solve, right? So first you see the problem, then you see the nature of the problem, then you analyze the cause of the problem, and then we see karma and afflictions is basically the cause of these problems, right? We have all kind of disturbance states of mind, and that brings us in an activity. Yeah, last time we talked about there's a mental intention, and then we say something, and there's a mental intention, and we physically act, either positive or negative, depending on the mental intention. Yeah, so then we act in various ways, and we create causes for suffering or happiness in the future. So and then sickness just happens to us beyond control, right? It's true. We want to get better, but sometimes you don't get better. Yeah, I have some experience with COVID, although I got negative within 10 days or something like that. But still, things are there. It's very interesting. So, but you don't want it, but you cannot do anything about it, right? It's there. Yeah, so better accept it than freaking out, because that by itself will not bring much benefit. So, but the thing is, it's something unwanted, right? The complications at what we call contaminated birth, contaminated sickness, contaminated old age, because the moment you're born, you're going to get older. I mean, let's hope, right? And then in the process of getting older, especially after you go over the 50, then those who are over 50, they know what I'm talking about. And those who are not over 50 yet, they think, oh yeah, maybe later. But it's going to happen to all of us, right? That things are going to be more difficult. Yeah, and the older you get, it's not getting better, it's getting worse, right? Physically. Mentally, it's in our hand. If we practice well now and we take that, then I've seen great masters, physically very difficult, but mentally extremely strong. Yeah, so the mental development is very important. Yeah. So then there is the sickness, kasa, old age, and then what happens? Then we die. Yeah. So that's a given, right? If we born, we know we're going to die. That's a given. We cannot escape that. But yeah, death is not really death actually, because we can't, as we saw before, there's a continuity of consciousness, but the body we have to leave behind. It causes some complications for some people, right? Yeah, okay. So then that's the Buddha thought, okay, I want to be free of all this. And then saw that the cause of all this is karma and afflictions. And then if you take away the cause, then the result will not come into being, right? So that's what the Buddha examined. If you take away karma and afflictions, or you purify your mind, you train your mind, become a better human being, prevent these destructive emotions from coming into your consciousness, and then on the same time you purify negative habituations. Yeah, how to do that we come to later. Then you reach kind of what we call the spiritual path. Yeah, so we just recite the mantra Tayata, Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgata Bodhisoha. Yeah, so that's basically the whole path to enlightenment. Yeah, so Bodhisoha, Bodhi means enlightenment, right? So Gata means go, Paragata go beyond, Parasamgata go beyond further, and then Bodhi means enlightenment. Yeah, so that's possible. So that's what the Buddha did. Yeah. And that's why we say to the founder, down transcendent destroyer. Yeah, that means that, and down transcendent destroyer means destroyer of what? Yeah, so it means destroyer of afflictions, destroyer of destructive emotions. Yeah, so that's a person who has completely destroyed or eliminated negative states of mind. Yeah, that we call the in this case, endowed transcendent destroyer. He's endowed with a transcendent quality of a mind that has eliminated all afflictions. Yeah, so that's kind of a very positive view, actually, because it is possible to change the mind, and it's possible to get rid of afflictions more and more and more and more and more, right? So that means that eventually it's possible to get rid of all afflictions together with the seeds, you know. So that means that at that time you become a destroyer of afflictions. Yeah. So the real enemy is not outside, but the real enemy is with us all the time. Yeah. So the real enemy are these destructive emotions. Yeah. These afflictions, they have to be taken away. So that's why we in DB, right? We all want to become, you know, kind of the warriors of of eliminating the afflictions, yeah, eliminating destructive emotions, yeah. And then it says the one gone beyond, because if you have eliminated all afflictions, you're beyond samsara, you're beyond contaminated birth, sickness, aging, and death. You see, so that's where we say gone beyond. Yeah. The full destroyer, right? The person who has eliminated all, all enemies, right? So we just talked about the affliction. Completely perfect. Yeah. Why completely perfected? Completely perfected because last time, remember, we talked about the term Buddha Sangye. Sang means to eliminate all faults, and Gye means to accomplish all qualities, right? Yeah, remember from last time? So that means the Buddha has eliminated all faults of the afflictions and accomplished all the positive aspects of the mind, all the qualities of the mind. That's what we call Sangye. Yeah, so so completely perfected. There is then your potential, as we talked about in the first model, Buddha potential. We talked about Buddha potential by nature and Buddha potential that has to be developed, right? So at the time of Buddhahood, the person has completely perfected elimination of all faults and accomplishment of all qualities, right? So that's why we say completely perfected. Yeah, so that's the Buddha potential that has to be developed is reached to the, you know, to the ultimate level, so to say. Yeah. fully awakened being. Yeah, so we call the Buddha an awakened one. Yeah, because he sees things much better than we do. Yeah, we see things through the power of our afflictions often. Yeah, whatever idea we have is colored by our destructive emotions and distractions. Yeah. Perfect in knowledge, because the Buddha has an all-knowing mind, what we call omniscience. Yeah, so we lack a lot of knowledge, right? For us, it's difficult, first of all, to understand these aspects of the mind. But yeah, you're lucky to have a certain amount of interest in these kind of matters, which is very precious. Yeah, last time also we talked about the precious human rebirth. Yeah, that means that you're born as a human. That's wonderful. But then on top of that, there's so many people among the 7 billion people on this planet. The majority. Oh. Different one today. Yeah, yeah. Yes. Normally it's kind of lemon, but today it's what is it? Orange. Yeah. So. So that means among the 7 billion people on this planet, the majority is not interested in spirituality at all, right? That's pretty obvious. If you see what people do in daily life, how they spend their time, you know. So then there's a very few who are interested in the mind and spirituality, including yourself, right? Otherwise you won't be here. So that's very fortunate, but this is a very small number. Then among that small number, those who really engage in the study and the practice of these aspects of mind training is even much less in number, right? So it is, if you really think, you're very fortunate, very rare opportunity. And then on top of that, we have the capacity, we have the complete potential at the moment to create causes for future types of existence very similar to what we have now. And we can achieve liberation and enlightenment based upon the vessel, so to say, of the human body with these kind of qualities we have right now. So it is very fortunate, you know. So often we don't really realize how fortunate we are, you know. Yeah, because it's very easy to fall back in old habits, and before you know, your mind is completely gone. Yeah, yeah, it's very easy. So very fortunate. Yeah. No real supreme guide of human beings. So supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, because the Buddha is very interesting. The Buddha achieved enlightenment and then very skillful in the sense that the Buddha teaches beyond discrimination, right? The Buddha teaches friends, enemies, strangers, those who like him, those who don't like him. The Buddha wants to help everybody, right? Beyond any form of class or race or background or family or culture or whatsoever. Yeah, because the Buddha sees everybody is the same in the sense wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, right? Even your worst enemy will give you a scolding, right? That person deep inside wants to have a peaceful mind, right? So even the Buddha sees that, you know, normally when a person is drunk and shouts at you, what do you say? Doesn't matter, person is drunk, right? Yeah, but a person who out of anger shouts at you is very similar, because the person is drunk by the anger beyond control, right? It's very similar. So, of course, we should, you know, have a law and order, and we shouldn't let people do all kind of negative deeds. But mentally, how we should react is out of compassion, right? Because this person who might say something wrong to you out of anger, deep inside, that person also wants happiness, right? So that's why the Buddha helps those who benefit him or harm him, you know, doesn't make a distinction among any form of background whatsoever. Yeah. The awakened one, glorious conqueror. Yeah, the glorious conqueror, same thing. Conqueror of what? Conqueror of the afflictions, right? Subdue from the Sakya clan, that's because the Buddha was born, as you know, as a prince. Yeah. So if you have time, you can read the little plaques of the, the 12 deeds of the Buddha. It's very interesting to see, that he was initially born as a prince, and had, had quite a lot of fun. It looked like he had a lot of fun because, if you're born as a prince and they give you everything you like, and for some people it's quite nice life, right? But then he went outside of the palace and saw people dying and saw people sick, then he thought, oh, what is this? And then he generated this wish of to understand what's going on, what is the cause of all this? And then he went into, he left the palace behind, and then taught a lot of teachings, and then he took teachings and then meditated for quite some years, and then eventually achieved a state of enlightenment. So that's a very interesting story in relation with verse number, not verse number, but that particular praise. Sometimes we do quite some teachings here at Jamyang, and then sometimes we explain text this more traditional way, right? So that verse this, verse that. So that's why in my mind it was a little bit like that. Okay. So then what we did last time, to understand the two types of meditation, remember? Analytical meditation and placement meditation. So placement meditation or concentration meditation is meant for the purpose of concentration, to develop concentration. And we know everything in daily life needs concentration. And even more the case, we need concentration to contemplate, to understand, to analyze, right? So we need a kind of certain amount of concentration, otherwise we just waste our time. And we also talked about, did we talk about that? Okay, so first give the overview. Okay, so that's, we need concentration meditation. That helps us also to be more aware, because you direct your mind, right? But the real transformation that's going to happen is by the power of an analytical meditation, as we will do today, right? That means by analyzing, first of all, the faults of a particular affliction, like anger. You analyze the faults. You just sit down and analyze from a neutral perspective. You go back to an event, recent event, maybe not too recent, otherwise it might influence your mind, but you go back to quite a recent event that you lost it. You got annoyed with a person or situation. And this time you don't get involved in the emotion. You don't let the emotion take over, but you just look at it from a distance and see what happened. You analyze what happened to me. Did it disturb my mind? How did it disturb my mind? Was my mind happy at the time or not? Or, was my mind clear at that time to make the right decision, to say the right thing or not? Just from a neutral perspective, you analyze, what is anger? What is that? What does it do? So you analyze that. And then you might come to the conclusion that anger actually is more destructive than constructive. So anger is a destructive emotion that disturbs our mind. We lose the clarity of the mind to think properly. And, we see only the faults of its object, as we also talked about last time, that anger overestimates or superimposes the faults of its object, right? You have a person or situation, you walk away from that person or situation with a mental image. You don't walk away with the person, mostly you just escape, right? For the situation. So you walk away, but you walk away with a mental image. You remember. So there's a conceptual consciousness. So then you walk away and you think, oh, this. So you create an image of that person that is completely full of faults, right? And it's not actually the person. But the problem is we believe it's the person. And that can give a lot of harm to self and others. So you analyze that for yourself, that what does anger do? And then you come to a conclusion and you focus on that conclusion for some time, for let's say half a minute or so. And then you analyze practicing patience. Meaning, if you keep your mind calm in those situations, you can still say something very direct to a person, right? Yeah, but with a calm mind. And your clarity is there to analyze. And so that means that actually to practice patience is much more beneficial. There's clarity, you have a better overview of your emotions, you can make the right decision, you can think properly, you don't disturb others by it, you might even inspire others by it, right? If you have a very intense discussion going on in the meeting and everybody is uptight, right? And you're the person who is calm and has an overview and let people speak and solve the problem in a very, very kind of constructive way, then people think, oh, that's interesting, right? Yeah. So that means that if you keep your mind cool and calm, you have much more control over yourself and over others. It's very true, because a person who is very emotional loaded is very difficult to influence others, right? Yeah. So then you see the benefits of practicing patience, you come to a conclusion and you focus on that. Yeah. So they have two conclusions, right? The faults of anger and the benefits of practicing patience. Yeah. So that gives you an insight. Aha, right? If you do this in the morning, for example, it gives you an insight in, oh, actually, I should not get angry anymore. I should practice patience. So the stronger that insight is, you will be able to remember it throughout the day, right? The stronger your insight is, the stronger you will remember it. It's true, right? The things that makes what becomes familiar to us, we will remember easily. You know, I some pop songs from when I was young, the lyrics just right there. Yeah. Because the habituation is very strong, you know? Yeah. So I was very much into house music, like hardcore house music. So I can still see. Other things in life, it's for me quite easy to detach for certain things, but sometimes there's a car here in the street with one of my favorite tunes, and I think, So then straight away, because your habituation when you were young was very strong, right? So straight away you remember things. Yeah. You can relate to that, right? So when we study, some things we forget, but like lyrics of our favorite songs is right there. So that means we need to remember something. We need a strong habituation. Yeah, and that habituation we build up in meditation, because we said, what is the meaning of the Tibetan word Gom or meditation is to habituate yourself to something positive. Yeah. And the more you habituate, the more familiar you are, it easier it will be to remember that. You see that? Yeah, makes sense or not? Yeah, so that means analytical meditation actually transforms the mind. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that's two things we discussed last time. So now we're going to do a concentration meditation again. And now I add two more things to it. Yeah, that's important. Maybe you can write down, because these things will come up quite often. And it's quite important to know what it means. So we have two mental factors. Yeah, we have a main mind, as we talked about in the first model. We have 5 sensory perceptions, right? And we have mental consciousness. Remember? And there are mental factors. The main minds by themselves, the 6 primary minds, they cannot function by themselves. Like a king or prime minister cannot function without members of parliament, we call it, right? MPs. Yeah. So that means that the prime minister needs a kind of incredible team to function, right? So our mind, same thing. Our mind needs mental factors to function. And certain mental factors are destructive, like anger, attachment, and ignorance. The 3 poisons, remember, we went over last week. Yeah, the 3 poisons are also mental factors, but there are afflictions, meaning they cause suffering. Yeah, anger, attachment, and ignorance cause suffering. But there are also constructive forms of mental factors. And that's 2 mental factors now we're going to talk about, which is important for meditation, right? So maybe you can write down. That is alertness. Yeah, to be alert. Alertness is one. And the other term is mindfulness. It's a very popular term, but often misunderstood. So I'll try to explain what it actually means. Yeah. So the first one, alertness, or sometimes translated as introspection. Yeah. So sometimes you read material, it's been translated as introspection, or sometimes translated as meta-awareness. Yeah. So I don't know in Spanish, but Kiko will do his job. Yeah. So yeah, alertness, that's one, and mindfulness, the other one. Yeah, and alertness can be translated as introspection or sometimes meta-awareness. Meta-awareness is also used sometimes. But yeah, I keep by alertness. Also in the Pali tradition, in the Theravada tradition, they often use the English term alertness. Yeah. Okay. So there's 2 mental factors there, alertness and mindfulness, right? So what do they do and how do they help us in meditation? So alertness is a mind that is alert. There's a mental factor that sees if you get distracted in a meditation. For example, if you often try to meditate in the beginning, it's quite interesting to see that you meditate and then your mind is completely somewhere else, in Battersea Park or in Spain on the beach. Yeah. So it happens, you meditate and then your mind is completely on the beach or completely somewhere else, and then a few minutes went and it kind of you know that feeling. Yeah, it's kind of the mind goes out. So that's a sign that alertness is not trained. If you decide to concentrate on the breath as we did last time, then alertness helps us to be alert when your mind is going outwards, or you think about your favorite food, or you think about tomorrow, or you think about yesterday, because most of the time our mind is in the past or the future. Our mind is never really in the present. So alertness helps us to be in the present when you want to be in the present. Yeah, alertness is kind of policeman or policewoman on the corner of the mind, you know, checking if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. So that's alertness. Yes, is that clear? Yeah. So that mental factor is very important because we easily get distracted, you know. So alertness helps us to recognize the distraction, and then you have to go back to your object of concentration. And that you do with mindfulness. So mindfulness means, the meaning of mindfulness actually is remembrance, is a mental factor that helps us to remember. Yeah. And to remember what? To remember a particular object that is familiar with. Right? So mindfulness is a mental factor that remembers, and in particular, an object it is familiar with. You see? So that means that with mindfulness is very important in that context. Because what will happen is if you meditate and we do the counting of the breath again, you know, then your mind goes, often when you hear a sound, the mind goes. Yeah. Sound is very, very easy to get out. Yeah. The mind goes outward. So then you see alertness is, aha, the mind goes out, right? So that's a sensory perception, and we will need mental consciousness for meditation. So meditation is activity of mental consciousness. Meditation is not an activity of the sensory perceptions. Yeah, so that means that meditation is pure mental consciousness because you cut down sensory perception. Because sensory perception, as we talked about previously in the first model, sensory perception will never accomplish anything constructive. Sensory perception will never really accomplish ultimate happiness. Every object of the senses, the more you engage in it, the more you do it, the more you attain the object of the senses, You don't become happier and happier and happier and happier and happier, right? So with mental consciousness, you can train your mind and train to become a happy human being, right? So mental consciousness is the consciousness we use in meditation, yeah? And then this mental consciousness, which is the main mind, has these two mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, right? So as soon, for example, if you do the counting of the breath, right, as we did last time, then the mind goes out because you hear something, or you think about yesterday, or you think about what you're going to do, what kind of dinner you're going to cook for the Spanish, because they mostly have dinner about 9 o'clock or something. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, very similar to Indians. I lived in the land of India for 2 decades. Yeah. So yeah, and also very similar. Yeah. Also lunch, they have very late lunch and then they have a long siesta. So basically afternoon is, yeah, is not really much present, right? In Spain. But yeah, very, yeah, it's healthy, they say. I mean, in a sense it helps because it's a bit tiring, when it's hot weather. Anyway, so when you meditate and the mind goes out, with alertness you see, oh, the mind goes out, right? And then mindfulness helps us to bring the mind back to the object of concentration. You see that? So you see that there is a distraction, you think about something, and there's nothing wrong. So you don't have to, blame yourself, just let it go, right? But you be aware that it's happening with alertness. And mindfulness remembers that you're supposed to be what you're supposed to be, which is the counting of the breath. So you see, you control your mind to a certain extent here, right? You concentrate on the breath, the mind goes out, you see that with alertness, and mindfulness, you bring it back. You see that? So you train your mind actually to do things you want to do. You see that? Yeah. So this mindfulness is a very strong force if you train it well. Yeah. So it remembers your instruction. In a similar way, if you do your analytical meditation in the morning, you see the faults of anger and the benefits of practicing patience, right? You be convinced, as we just saw, we come to a conclusion, yeah? And you are convinced about that conclusion, that you familiarize yourself with that, and it's very easy to remember. So next time you get irritated in the day, with alertness, you see, oh, look, irritation is coming. Then with mindfulness, you don't say that, you think that, right? With mindfulness, you think, I'm not going to follow this because it's not very constructive. You see that? So with those two mental factors throughout the day, you train your mind. Basically, that's what's happening. Yeah, you be convinced about the benefits of practicing patience and not getting angry. You remember that during the day. The stronger your insight is, the stronger you remember. You see that? Yeah, so that's with any form of affliction whatsoever, or mental impairment or difficulty. There's a lot of very interesting scientific backup for this, especially in studies in obsessive compulsive disorder by Jeffrey Schwartz. It's a very interesting. He uses the same techniques, right? What he calls the power of mental attention or mental force. Yeah, actually, he talks about alertness and mindfulness all the time. Yeah, so that's a very powerful tool. So that means that with those two mental factors, you train your mind to direct your mind not to follow thoughts you don't like to follow. You see that? So that's a very powerful tool that later on, if you train well, it can prevent yourself from following negative thoughts or negative patterns. Because as soon as a negative thought comes up, you have this alertness. Aha, look, a negative thought. The more concentration you have developed, the more aware you become. Yeah, initially, anger just happens to us, right? It happens to us and we're stuck. But the more, the more aware you are with this awareness building, what happens based on concentration meditation. So then actually what happens is time is very subjective, right? So that means that anger, initially it just happens to you, but over time you see, oh, this is the first split second of irritation. This is the second split second of irritation. This is the third, and increases. And now I take action before it's too late. right? So that means that it helps you to be more aware before the emotional hijack happens. You're able to take action, right? So when the emotional hijack happened, then it's better just to go for a walk, because if you don't force yourself to meditate and then it doesn't go because you're angry, it's better to go for a walk, right? But if you not in that emotional hijack yet, but you see it coming, it's not that strong. It doesn't influence you that much. You can tackle it. You can tackle it right there with remembering, with alertness. Ah, look, it's coming. With mindfulness, you remember your insight. If I follow this mind, it's not constructive. I'm going to follow the mind of patience. And you transform the whole process, you see? So that's a few things good to know, that those two mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, you train in concentration meditation and in analytical meditation, and you use it in daily life to actually transform the mind. Yeah, does it make sense a little bit or not? Yeah. So then the stronger alertness and mindfulness are, the better the training becomes, right? That makes, that is implied. So that means with concentration meditation, we actually train in those two mental factors, because you count the breath from 1 to 10. As we did, we will do it again today, as we did last time. So as soon, that's your object of concentration here, right? You can have many objects of concentration. You can have a flower or an image of the Buddha, but most of you are maybe not Buddhas. Sorry, not Buddhas. Yeah, once I was in the train in the Netherlands. My mother lives in not a very big city, very small, and you know, now walking around like this. In the early days, it's a bit people. But I was in this train in this small city, and I walked in the train, and then this couple with 2 children, and they looked at me and said, "Oh, are you a Buddha?" I said, "No, not yet." So, but they meant actually, "Are you a Buddhist?" Right? Yeah. So once in Paris, I was not very clever. I was many years ago. I was there for. I went to Indian embassy for Indian visa, and then there was this old lady on the street, and I was lost. You know, it was before these kind of mobile phones with your Google Map, right? Yeah. So I was lost. So I thought, oh, just ask the road where I have to go. But in my mind, I walked like this in India all the time. But in Paris, in those days, especially in the conservative kind of people, it's different, right? So this old lady on the street, I asked her. First of all, I was talking in English, and maybe she didn't understand. And then she looked at me. It's alive. As you know, she just turned the other direction and walked away. Yeah, very interesting. But London have very interesting comments. Yeah, maybe I can share with you another time. Yeah, very interesting, because you're quite different, right? The way you walk around. Anyway, yeah, London quite positive. London is very multicultural kind of place, you know. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Ah, yeah, because of Buddha, right? That's why I ended into the story. Because I said you not Buddhas, but actually I meant you not Buddhists. So that's why we use the breath as a kind of concentration object, because it's a secular or universal object, right? Yeah. So, okay. So that means that if you use it as an object of concentration, then you should not do anything else than counting the breath, right? As we talked about last time. So we do that now again. But now we're going to add those two mental factors to it. That means as soon as a thought comes up of the past or the future, with alertness, you say, ah, look, distraction. And with mindfulness, you remember what you're supposed to be doing. And that's the counting of the breath. Yeah? Yeah, does it make sense or not? Yeah? Okay. So that's why we use alertness and mindfulness in the training to get more concentration. That's 2 things, right? There's 2 more things also to be written down or understand, because we have 2 obstacles of meditation, and that's important to know, right? So what are the 2 obstacles? The obstacles of laxity and excitement. Yeah, laxity is a kind of a mental dullness, right? When you know, when you have a deep sleep and you wake up by your alarm clock in the middle of that deep sleep, you know, your mind is kind of very difficult. Not very difficult, but difficult to think, you know, very heavy. You know, when the mind is very heavy, it's very difficult to think, or when you're very tired, you cannot think properly, right? Yeah. So that's that. That's kind of what we call laxity. Yeah, laxity is a kind of mental dullness that also is an obstacle to meditation. Because if you want to meditate and your mind is too dull, then it doesn't produce the clarity that is needed, right? So we need to have the antidote towards that. And that has to be recognized. So as soon as you see your mind is getting a little bit, sleepy or dully, you have to be aware of that with alertness and with mindfulness. You should apply the antidote or wash your face or think about an incredible fortune situation you have, something that uplifts the mind, right? Yeah. So think about presumed rebirth or Buddha potential, that you very, very fortunate. And oh yes, so that's kind of how you deal with this mental dullness or this kind of laxity. Yeah. Then the other obstacle is excitement. Yeah. Excitement is, so mental dullness or laxity brings the mind inward too much, right? Well, excitement and distraction brings the mind outward too much. Yeah. So to relate to that, I don't think I told you last time. If you have a deep sleep, you wake up in the middle of deep sleep, is dullness, right? Laxity. Then take 4 or 5 heavy duty, strong cappuccinos, and then the mind goes like that. Allez. Yeah, some breeze. Yeah, thank you. It's a bit warm, no, today? Is it okay? Yeah, yeah. So, Casa. Yeah, in the West, we don't really have fans, no? In India, we always have fans everywhere. Yeah, maybe it's coming soon. Yeah. So, what did I say? Huh? Cappuccino, right? So if you have a few cappuccinos, then the mind goes like, then distraction is very strong. You see? So that are the two extremes. Yeah, sleepiness or this heavy distraction. Both are obstacles to meditation. Yeah. So when the mind goes out, when you think about things of attachment or eating or drinking things or going somewhere or just simple thoughts of the past and the future, they're all distractions, right? So you use alertness to recognize that and mindfulness to bring your mind back. Yeah, you see that? How you actually train your mind to, okay, you count the breath, the mind goes out, you bring it back. Yeah, you see, that's how it functions. If the mind is too dull, you contemplate the precious opportunity you have. And when the mind is too distracted, you can contemplate death and impermanence. One of the most favorite, I don't know favorite, but most important meditations. Because if you contemplate death and impermanence a lot, right? You see in the correct way, you see, oh, I don't have maybe that much time left. I should put some action. I should use this opportunity before it's too late or before you get too old. Things are too difficult. Yeah, same thing, So that means that before that happens, I better get my act together. So that gives you kind of a booster not to get distracted, right? So, or brings the mind a little bit down if the mind is too excited. Yeah? Think about death and impermanence can help that way. Yeah, it's a bit clear what the obstacles of meditation are: laxity and excitement. Laxity brings the mind too much inward or makes the mind dull, while excitement goes out too much and causes distraction. Yeah. So with mental dullness, we think about very uplifting things, like to get rid of the mental dullness of presumed rebirth or the incredible potential you have. Oh, great, right? And then when the mind is too excited and goes out, you think about, oh, I can die any moment. So why should I engage in all these objects of attachment and desire that on the long term doesn't bring much benefit anyway, right? So then you actually bring your mind a little bit back instead of getting too excited about things, right? Yeah, it's true, right? We often get excited about many things, and when it's rooted in attachment or desire, then, as we said before, it overestimates the qualities in our mind, we only think about, oh, I have this or that. That would be so amazing. And attachment is very sneaky because it thinks, if I have this, I get benefit, you know? So it's a kind of oil on a piece of cloth, they say, very difficult to remove, very difficult to recognize. But that's what it is, right? We overestimate the qualities and then we meet the object and the object doesn't have the qualities according to our expectation and there's no satisfaction, right? Yeah, so that's why we meditate a little bit on that and impermanence to counteract that. Yeah, yeah, is it a bit clear? The mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, and the two obstacles to meditation, laxity and excitement. Yeah, that's the main things to be understood today. Yeah. Okay, so before we do an analytical meditation, first let's do the meditation on the breath, and I will introduce another aspect to that. So we know, right? Yeah. We know the seven-fold posture. Yeah. So that means that your legs can be crossed, so you sit on the chair. Then the hands basically you put in your lap, right? Some people meditate like this, but in this tradition you just put the right on top of your left. The back should be straight if you sit on the floor or on a chair. Yeah, the shoulders should be loose, but not too much to the inside or too much to the outside, right? So, straight. The head is slightly bent so that the crown of your head is one line with your spine. Yeah, so that helps. There's many things to do, this posture, with the energy channels, that everything goes smooth, right? Yeah. And then the mouth is closed. Yeah, you breathe in and out to your nose. And then the tongue is just behind the upper teeth. Yeah, that's prevents the mouth from getting dry or producing too much liquid. The eyes, as we talked about, are just about to be closed, but not completely closed. And then you see the same thing. If your eyes are open, there's excitement or distraction about seeing things. If they're completely closed, there can be a laxity. So the way to close them is you can train slowly over time that just a little bit of light goes inside. Yeah. Not too much so you see anything, but also not that you close them too much. That's darkness, right? So that's, in the beginning, you can just close them and over time you can train in that. Yeah. Okay, so that's the posture being explained. Then I was planning to introduce a new technique of breathing that helps us to, because if you breathe, breathing has a very strong influence on our emotions, right? We see that people will get angry or very emotional, has an influence on the breathing. And then you take a few deep breaths when you have a difficult time, then it helps to settle down the mind, right? So there's a correlation between the breathing and our emotional life. So there's a technique I show you today that to equalize the breath, because mostly between our left and right nostril is mostly not equal, yeah, because of disturbance. And yeah, anyway, there's many things to say about it. You don't have to, maybe another time, but so that means to settle down the breathing, which helps to calm down the mind as a preliminary to concentration meditation. Yeah, so the way to do that is you have your right index finger and you close your left. Yeah, with a mask is a bit complicated what to do. Anyway, you got it, and then when you do home, you can check it out. Yeah, so you, with your right index finger, you close your left nostril, right? And then you breathe in to your right. Yeah, so, and this breathing you can do a little bit forceful, not too forceful, but you can put some pressure, right? So you breathe into your right. Yeah, so then your kasa diaphragm has to go down and your chest goes out, right, to fill your lungs. And then when you breathe in and you finished breathing in, then you just hold it for a second or two. Yeah. And then you close your right nostril and you breathe out to your left. So again, with the right index finger, close left nostril, breathing to right. Hold for a second or two. Close right. Breathe out left. One more time. Breathe in right. Hold second or two. Breathe out left. Yeah. Then you change. In the sense, you take your left index finger and you block your right nostril. Yeah. And breathe into the left. Hold for a second or two. Close left. Breathe out right. Again, close right. Breathe in left. Hold second or two. Close left, out right. One more time. In left. Out right. And then both nostrils. Then you breathe in. Hold for a second or two. And breathe out. One more time. Yeah, second time. Breathe in both nostrils. Hold for a second or two. And breathe out. Then third time, last time. Breathe in both nostrils. Hold for a second. And breathe out. Yeah, so that's a kind of a technique that helps, has many benefits for breathing correctly and calming down the mind. And then when you do that in the morning every day, that that helps also to calm down the mind, just as a preliminary to the kasa, the constriction meditation. So I will repeat that you won't forget. I mean, eventually, sometimes we forget things, right? So that's why we need some repetition. Okay, so that's the preliminary to the concentration meditation. So now let's do concentration meditation as we did last time, but now we add those two mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, right? So that are the two mental factors that helps us not to get distracted or that the mind becomes too dull, right? So as soon as there's a thought, just don't pay attention, but be aware of it with alertness. And with mindfulness, you bring your mind back to what you're supposed to be doing, and that's the counting of the breath. Yeah, so that's the way we try to do the concentration meditation. Yeah, so here you don't forcefully breathe, you just do it natural, right, to the nose, and then just observe in the form of counting it, to direct your mind to an object of the counting. As soon as there's a sound you hear or thought that comes up, don't pay attention, right? Let it just pass by. Don't get irritated by it whatsoever. Just let it go, but see it with alertness. And with mindfulness, you bring your mind back to the object of concentration. Yeah, so let's give it a try for about a minute or two to count every in-breath as 1, out-breath is 2, in-breath is 3, out-breath is 4, and then count for yourself to 10 and then start over counting. Yeah, and you try to use these two mental factors, right? That as soon you hear playing or you hear something, the mind goes, you be aware, you alert, and mindfulness, you just bring it back to you're supposed to be doing, the counting of the breath. Yeah, so let's give it a try for about a minute or two. All right, so then we can stop. So with this, when I said before, just make sure you have shorter sessions, right? And this quality is more important than quantity in the beginning. So in the morning, when you wake up, wash your face, and you do like this kind of meditation every day for a few minutes, then you train in those two mental factors, right? So the more you train in those two mental factors, if you combine it with this analytical meditation, then those mental factors throughout your life will be much more constructive and much more powerful to direct your mind in a direction you want to direct it. You know, that's a very powerful tool. And then over time, you become so aware over emotions that come up and go that they don't disturb you anymore. Yeah, because one aspect, you can take a distance from it. Yeah, if you take a distance from an emotion or difficulty, you have much more clarity and you're not involved. Yeah, that's why when we have a problem in life and then we go for a holiday and then we come back and we can look at it much better because we took distance from the issue, right? So that means that helps, those two mental factors helps us to be able to take a distance, right? And look at it with a clarity. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the benefits. And then with analytical meditation, the stronger your result or the stronger your reason or the stronger your insight becomes, you remember that much clearer, right? So that's a real transformation process, so to say. Yeah. So then in analytical meditation, you also use, of course, you use kind of concentration. Yeah. That's also needed because in analytical meditation, when you get distracted, your reasoning is not very strong. Yeah. So in analytical meditation, also we need a certain amount of concentration to be able to have the power of the reasoning. the stronger the reasoning, the more concentration there is at the conclusion, because with the reasoning, you see, anger disturbs the mind, it's not constructive. Practicing patience is much more constructive in that way. You reach conclusions, right? So those conclusions you remember throughout the day, right? There's somebody, wake up call. It's outside, maybe. Yeah, I have to wake up, it says. Yeah. So that means that if you do your analytical meditation well, with concentration and solid reasoning, you reach a conclusion that is kind of very, very strong. And the stronger your conclusion is, the greater the impact. So that means that and then you come to that conclusion and you focus on that conclusion, right? So that means the more concentration you have, the bigger impact that particular conclusion has on your mind. Yeah, so that's also there. We need a kind of concentration, to be used. Okay, shall we give it a try? Yeah. So you sit down as we we don't have to sit down again. No. So what you do, you remember an event recently, that you analyze, that you got annoyed with a person or situation, but you don't get involved. You don't this time get involved. Yeah, the only thing this time is something. I don't know. Yeah. No, that's a kind of maybe touchy on the knees. I'm not sure. Yeah, we have some creatures on the knees on the floor. Yeah. Yeah, they also want happiness. They don't want suffering. So yeah, they're looking for happiness. Yeah. Okay. So with the analytical meditation, the clue is to, if you watch a movie and you're completely into the movie, you're completely occupied by the movie, right? Yeah. You see that people in the screen, and you want to say hello and they say yes, yes, but they don't really hear what you're saying because their mind is inside the screen. But you can look at a person and you can look at a screen, you be aware of the movie and be aware of the person watching it, but you don't get involved in the movie that you're all gonna sit there and watch until the end, right? So that kind of mindset we should have. From a neutral perspective, from a corner of the mind, you observe what actually happened, in this event of getting angry or irritated. Yeah, is that a bit clear? So that's because if you get involved and your mind gets irritated again, there's this, you're gonna justify it. It's good to be angry, right? So then anger takes over, because anger is also very sneaky, also has this aspect of, when you follow me, then you get some benefit. Yeah, but actually it's just deceiving aspect. Yeah, so all these destructive emotions, basically, they're lying to us all the time. The problem is we believe them, but if you don't believe them anymore, then they stop lying. Same with the person, the person is lying all the time, the person will stop lying, right? Yeah, same thing. Yeah. Okay, so then you just take an example out of your daily life that you get irritated and analyze. What did I do to my mind? How did I react? Was there a constructive form of thinking or not? Yeah, and then you come to a conclusion, you focus on that conclusion. Then you go to mind of patience, and then you try to see, is this mind of patience, is it constructive? If you keep your mind calm, you can make the right decision. You can still tell the person straight, or tell a person is wrong or whatsoever, but inside completely calm, right? So it's much more control over the situation. Yes, you see that, you come to a conclusion of that, focus on that, and then you come to an overall conclusion of those two. Yes, it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, give it a try. So yeah. So think about an event, recent event that you got irritated with a person or situation. and then try to analyze. That it disturbed your mind, and after disturbing your mind, you might have said something wrong, you later regret it, there was no clarity at that time, and you lost your appetite, and yeah, you couldn't solve the problem because of the mind being completely irritated. So try to see from various angles what that anger actually does, and if that's kind of constructive or destructive. Yeah, so analyze for yourself that for about, let's say, 2 minutes. And try to see that as anger basically disturb your mind and you were not in control. You might have said something wrong, and actually it made the situation worse rather than better. So then you completely lost appetite, or worrying about the rest of the day or the rest of the night. So try to see that this anger actually only caused trouble. Yeah, and to come to that conclusion that anger is not very constructive, and then focus on that conclusion for about, let's say, a minute or so. Yeah. Then analyze a mind that is calm, mind of patience, right? Who is not irritated, and see if there's calmness, you are much more capable of being in control, having clarity of the mind, and still be able to, lead a particular situation in a good direction, or say the right thing at the right time, without losing, this kind of clarity. So, and in a big meeting when there's a lot of irritation and there's one person who's capable of keeping the whole situation in control, keeps his own mind calm, you see there's so much more benefit, so much more constructive, right? So try to see the benefits of practicing patience, so to say, the benefits of keeping the mind calm, and overview the situation much better, and analyze the situation much better. So try to analyze it for yourself for about a minute or two. And also try to try to come to the conclusion, seeing that this mind of patience, or this mind being calm and analyzing and making the right decision, saying the right thing at the right time, complete control. So I try to see the benefits of that mind and then come to a conclusion that something to be developed, right? So, and then focus on that conclusion for about a minute. And then come to an overall conclusion that actually remembers the conclusion of destructiveness of anger and the conclusion of the benefits of patience, and then come to an overall conclusion that thinks, oh, it's much more beneficial to keep my mind calm and make the right decision and practicing patience rather than following anger again, right? So come to that overall conclusion and then focus on that overall conclusion for about a minute. All right, so then we can stop. Yeah, so you can probably imagine that the stronger these conclusions are, the more clarity there is in the analytical approach, the stronger the conclusion becomes, right? So, and the stronger the conclusion is, and the more you're able to focus on that conclusion, that means that it brings impact. Oh, it's like this. Yeah. So, and that the more you habituate to that, the stronger it becomes, and then you can actually change. And you can use any afflictions, right? If desire or strong attachment is very strong, yeah, you contemplate the faults of this desire and the benefits of contentment, for example, right? So you can do a similar meditation in that regard, And with jealousy, think about how wonderful it would be to rejoice in somebody else's good deeds, for example, right? So with jealousy, you only have yourself. It's true, right? Jealousy is very interesting. You only have yourself, or and then because the person doesn't know you're jealous about that person, right? Often, so actually, you only have yourself. Yeah, and then we talked about last time already in this traffic jam, scolding at the person in front, but actually the person is just listening to some music, completely calm and is not disturbed because it doesn't hear you. And you just kind of, So you actually only have yourself, with most of these destructive emotions, And a similar thing with anxiety, fear, depression, same thing. You can use it in a similar way. Just analyze, because with those kind of issues, first of all, we should have an acceptance is there. Nobody is perfect. Life is not perfect, right? We have all kind of things in life, positive things, negative things. And then analyze that and have an acceptance. That's the first step. Because if you have acceptance, you can take a distance. Yeah, you're not too much involved by it, right? So you can take a distance and you look at it from a distance. Yeah, and then you analyze. And then the same thing, you can contemplate. Is it beneficial to watch, to follow this, or is it more beneficial to have a more optimistic worldview or whatsoever, and you see the benefits of that, you concentrate on that, and then it shifts the mind over time, right? So that means it is possible. And Jeffrey Schwartz, in a medical doctor in the field of obsessive compulsive disorder, used similar techniques, and he accomplished a lot of benefits in his treatment, because he saw that regular medication didn't really help that much, right? And I have a few friends also, who do this kind of meditations. Initially, they were, depending on medication for depression, all kind of things. But of course, you have to depend on medication initially. But some people are capable of reducing it over time. Yeah, of course, with consultation of the doctor, etc., etc. So these kind of techniques can help a lot if you put some effort into it. Yeah, so that's kind of techniques we can use in daily life to actually change the mind. Yeah, with the concentration meditation, analytical meditation, using these two mental factors, alertness and mindfulness. Yeah, so that's basically the most important things to be understood today. Yeah, and of course for the rest of your life. Yeah. Because to change the mind is not that, after this evening you won't get angry anymore. That's not going to happen, right? But it gives you a tool. If you do it on a regular basis, I've seen people changed, right? So that's possible. You just have to put some effort. If you every morning, that's the best way to start your morning. If you didn't have a too late heavy dinner, looking at my Spanish friends, that's why they start a little bit later in the morning also, probably. But it's true. If you in the morning, most of the time in the morning, our mind is much clearer than in the evening, because we're tired of the day. So in the morning, if you spend some time, let's say 1 or 2 minutes, or you do the breathing first, the 9-round breathing, then you do 1 or 2 minutes the counting of the breath, right? And then you do 3 or 4 or 5 minutes analyze a thing in life that is difficult for you, either anger or attachment or jealousy or pride, whatsoever, and analyze the faults of the affliction, and then the benefits of the constructive or thought or antidote. Yeah, so patience towards anger, contentment towards attachment, for example, rejoicing in our good deeds towards jealousy, and seeing that you don't know that much against pride, or that you don't have all the qualities yet. So because pride is also kind of prevents us from changing, right? If you think, oh, we are quite something, then we never increase, so that's, you think about the faults, one aspect, the faults of the, we come to more to these points, the faults of the destructive emotion and the benefits of its antidote, that will actually shift the mind in a particular direction, right? Yeah. Does it make sense or not? And try to analyze this. And if you do it on a daily basis, then for sure, if you train in those two mental factors, there's much more value to life, because you learn to direct your mind, and actually eventually it's very interesting. You can see the destructive emotion coming up, you take distance, that's already helping the emotion not to take over, right? And then you just transform it with this kind of meditation techniques. And that, gives you a much more peaceful way of life, so to say, with less destructive emotions over time. Yeah, so we think about years, not weeks. Have to be realistic, right? So if you expect too much and then you don't meet those expectations, you give up, right? So, and that's why we're here together for 2 years in this course. And one of the main advices, do not give up. So that means keep going, because then over time you get something. And sometimes things are more difficult, other times things are more easy, some things are more interest, other times things are of less interest. But if you get a whole view of over a 2-year program like this, then what you have studied before, you can review again, and it's a kind of complete kind of package, right? But can help quite a bit in our development. Yeah, anyway, that's kind of a part of my pep talk. I have one of my job descriptions is also to give some pep talks now and then. Yeah, so I have to do this. I can tick it off. Okay, is there any questions regarding this? Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
we'll
first
take questions from the Gompa first, and then we'll come to the English language questions online.
And my Spanish friends next week, right? Because this model only has 2 weekends or 2 evenings of explanation. And then next week, yeah. I was thinking there's a sneeze coming, but actually didn't. Yeah, so it's still there. Yeah. Yeah, so then next week we have the review discussion, right? Yeah. So then with the Spanish people, yeah, with the Spanish people, then I have the direct question answer like last time. Yeah, but not a half an hour, probably always longer. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Okay.
Hi, basically, is jealousy the opposite of resentment?
Resentment?
Yeah.
Jealousy, you're
Yeah, do you think jealousy is the opposite of jealousy is resentment?
It depends how you define resentment, right? We mostly say if you're jealous about somebody's qualities, then instead of being jealous, you try to rejoice or feel happy about a person having those qualities. That creates a cause for yourself to get those qualities if you don't have them. Yeah, so we mostly refer to rejoicing in somebody's good deeds or good behavior or particular qualities. Yeah. So that becomes a kind of antidote to his jealousy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Still there. Yeah, it's just behind the corner. Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. My question is, why do we say some of the prayers in English and some of them in Tibetan?
Yeah, I know.
Why don't we say all the prayers in Tibetan or all the prayers in English?
Good question. Because if you do everything in Tibetan, then most of you, I mean, almost all of you don't know Tibetan, right? So you miss out on the meaning. Yeah. But with Tibetan, it has a kind of, same with Sanskrit or Pali, it carries kind of blessing of the lineage, right? So then with a prayer like a refuge prayer, which most people are used to, that we do in Tibetan because people know where they reside. Yeah, so prayers we get used to over time, also the dedication prayers, we do the 2 bodhicittas, for example. If you've done that quite a few times in English, you know the meaning of it. And then you recite it in Tibetan, so you can reflect upon the meaning while reciting in Tibetan. So you have both benefits, because without the meaning, a prayer doesn't make much sense. Yeah, you have to know the meaning, right? That's why I explained a little bit last week and this evening. So if you know the meaning, but then on top of that, you use a particular language that carries a blessing or whatsoever, it can transform the mind, because there's the meaning that is understood, there's a tune and a blessing, and that actually can transform the mind in a particular way. Yeah, but without a meaning, it doesn't happen. So the main important thing is getting the meaning right. Yeah, and then the next level is Tibetan, Sanskrit, Pali, whatsoever, and then it can carry a kind of uncommon transformation in the prayer. Yeah, yeah.
I've got 2 questions. The first one was about the insight meditation, analytical. Sorry, I was reading the How to Meditate book that's on the recommended reading.
Kathleen MacDonald.
Yeah, it's on yeah. And when she talks, and you talk about when you have an insight, you then focus on the insight. She talks about sort of immersing yourself in the feeling of the insight. And I think to myself, so I have an insight, and then I think sort of she talks about single pointed, you know, concentration on it.
On that insight, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I think so I understand that in relation to placement meditation, but when it comes to the analytical, I think, okay, so I've had the insight. Now what? When you say focus for like 1 minute, I think, okay, so is it supposed to be a feeling I'm focusing on? Am I supposed to be still thinking about the insight?
Actually, yeah. So when you do an analytical meditation, you analyze.
Yes.
Oh, anger is destructive because I lose the peace of mind, the clarity goes, I say something wrong. That's analytic approach, right? So then you come to a conclusion or an insight which says, oh, it's not beneficial to let anger take over. Yeah, so that's a kind of you can mentally verbalize it for yourself and then concentrate on that kind of insight, as we call it, right? Is feeling is a kind of a separate mental factor, right? So here, what we do is a conceptual consciousness that comprehends the analytical meditation and come to a conclusion like, oh, it's not constructive to follow anger. Yeah, so then you just try to focus on that particular understanding, so to say. You can verbalize it for yourself mentally, right? Because it's kind of a mental image of the conclusion, if we technically say it. Yeah, so you focus on that, because that will produce, the way it works is because every moment of consciousness comes into being, abides and disintegrates, right? So the longer you hold it, the stronger the imprint, so to say. Yeah. So you then that consciousness stops. You stop your meditation, but these seeds are planted. So the more seeds you have planted, the easier it will become for them to sprout during the day, right? So that's what we try to do with these analytical meditations. You come to a conclusion, focus on that. Then you finish with that, then you do that for next day again, you do it a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years. You have all these potentials in your mind. Then throughout the day, when anger comes up, you straight away remember that, because there's so many potentials, right? So if you take quantum mechanics into the picture, that means the more probabilities there are, it's mostly likely to follow the most amount of probabilities, right? So that's exactly the same thing. Yeah. So.
And the other question was about placement meditation. One is, if you haven't been doing counting, you've just been, is it okay to, I've been just focusing on the sensations of the breath in the body.
Yeah, or just breathing to your, at the level of your nostrils. Or something.
Yeah.
But it's that you have to make a distinction between a mere awareness meditation and a concentration meditation, right? A concentration meditation is focused on one particular aspect of the breathing, not the whole process. For example, either the air through the nostrils or the movement of your chest, but not everything as a process. Because everything as a process, although there is some concentration involved, it's more kind of an awareness meditation that goes a little bit to the aspect of an analytical aspect, right? That you analyze what's going on. Yeah. So with concentration meditation, you have to have one particular object that is easy to focus upon. Yeah. So there can be the counting of the breath, or it can be the mere, air that flows through your nostril, that particular awareness, and focusing on that, or the mere movement of the chest, only that particular aspect. Yeah, as long as you don't start to analyze anymore. Okay. That's
And what happens when the breath gets subtle and you have moments where there is no, you can't, the breath seems to not be there? Do you just, I've read different things. Do you just sit with that, or do you?
If that happens, then it's better to take another object. Yeah, because over time, sometimes breathing becomes more subtle and difficult to recognize, right? So then it's better to, if you're Buddhist, take an object of the Buddha image, for example, right? So that's another way to do concentration meditation. You have a picture of a Buddha form. That can be Buddha Shakyamuni, that can be Aryatara or Manjushri, where you feel a connection with. So you have a picture like that here, and then you look at the picture, and then about a body's length away, in the front of yourself, at the level of your eyebrows, and then you see the height of the visualized image. You have to check yourself, right? So you look at the picture and you build it up in a visualization, right? It's kind of an analytical. Then the moment you have a little bit of clarity of the outline, and maybe not all the details are there, but that comes later, you focus on that, and then you concentrate. Same thing. Any thought that comes up, with alertness you be aware, and with mindfulness you bring it back to the focus on that particular image. Yeah. So then over time, because of the example, that image becomes more and more clear to your mind, right? It becomes easier to concentrate. So that's another technique we use especially in Buddhist meditation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the teachings. Yeah. I just wondered, with the prayers and dedication prayers before and after meditation, would they be the same as these for the teachings, or which ones would you recommend?
For the time being, we keep it simple, because most of you are quite new, right? And maybe not even Buddhist, so we keep it quite simple. But over time, we can add more. So when we go into the model of the part which is coming up, right? Then you start to know a little bit about the parts, and then we can add another prayer. Yeah, so it's just slowly building up, because most people are quite new. Then we don't want to do too many prayers, because for some people it's kind of why. Yeah. So then people start to understand the meaning of it, as we just now discussed a little bit. Then we're gonna do a little bit more. Yeah.
So would you do these prayers and the dedication prayers before and after every meditation?
If you want to do yourself, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, if you're not a Buddhist, then you don't have to, do this kind of prayers, right? You can pray to whatever you believe in. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. As a non-Buddhist, it doesn't become a Buddhist practice, but why not? So you can do that for yourself, and then do the counting of the breath, and then the analytical meditation. It's all very secular. You see this, as we did it up till here, with the exception of the Buddha image as concentration meditation. For the rest, it's very secular, right? So it can be used for any form of religion or faith, right? So that's also said before. The purpose of this course is not to make people Buddhists, right? Only for those who are really interested, they can take the step if they wish. But for the majority of the people, it's better to just follow your own belief or whatsoever. Yeah, and use this kind of material to understand your own form of faith better. Yeah, that's the main purpose. So yeah, according to that, you can fill it in for yourself how to do prayers. Yeah.
And the last question is, if you're doing concentration or shamatha meditation, and you're bringing in analytical, if you're doing a few sessions per day of concentration or shamatha, do you do the analytical each time, or would you only do it once a day, if you're starting?
I mean, depends on your time, right? I mean, to be honest, if you really want to train your mind, it takes time, right? And the more time you spend on the meditation cushion, the quicker the progress, right? Yeah. I mean, you also have to, learn how to practice in daily life, of course, right? So if you can make a combination, then that's also what we sometimes encourage, and what we sometimes also do is retreats. Yeah, you take a few days off and you do 4 or 6 sessions a day. Yeah, and we will talk about this more when we do the next model of the part. Yeah, so how do particular Lamrim retreat later on, or do retreat on practicing patience, a long weekend for yourself or whatsoever. So then you can just you cut down external distractions, right? Like mobile phones, of course, and not going out too much, and then you just do 4 or 6 sessions a day. Yeah, and then mind settles down, and then it's easier actually to see some progress. Yeah.
And you do the analytical each time when you.
Yeah. So then you, for example, if you do 4 or 6 sessions a day, you do kind of the 9 round you can do, and then the concentration meditation you do, and then you do the analytical meditation. Then you have a break, a cup of tea, do some exercise, and then you do the next session. Yeah. So then that's how you actually can divide your day. But it's important in the beginning to make sessions shorter and make sure there's quality. Quality is very important, And then when quality is there, you can make it longer. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. I was just wondering, in regards to prayer, dedication, and concentration meditation, where mantra and chanting falls in that space?
Mantra in general, although we have mantras in the Sutrayana also, but mainly it comes from the Vajrayana. Yeah, so the last model in this course is discovering the Vajrayana, right? So that mainly comes from there. There are uncommon kind of features to concentrate on certain more subtler objects to generate quicker concentration and more stable concentration, right? So that's don't have to worry about too much at the moment. That will come, to it. So you just have to hang in there till the end, right? Yeah. And then there's also mantras in the sutra, like Taita Gata Gata Para Gata Parasam Gata Bodhisoha. Yeah, so that's a very precious mantra, because that mantra carries the whole path from the beginning till the end. So that are kind of Sanskrit sounds created by the Buddha, that has great meaning, right? One particular word in there you can talk about for days. Yeah, so that's a mantra is something that condenses a lot of meaning in one particular syllable or one sound. Yeah, but there's other concentration meditation on that as well. But yeah, we talk about it later. Yeah. Okay, online.
Online we have Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe.
You.
This is in some way is a follow-up to one of the previous questions about particularly when the breathing slows down. So when I'm meditating, I'm slowly making some progress, and I notice that my breathing will not start off that slow, but towards the end of the meditation period, it will start to slow down to some extent. And then there's a greater gap between each breath.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, one can then say, start to focus on, do a visualization. And what I've been thinking of at the moment is to start off focusing on the breath, which is my normal practice. And if it doesn't always slow down a lot, but sometimes it slows down more than in some sessions more than in other sessions. And I'm thinking to maybe make a transition to a visualization if the breath does slow down somewhat. But then I've made a transition, so I've sort of broken concentration. So I'm not quite sure how to handle that. And that's what I'm asking about. Thank you.
So basically, if you want to train in concentration, you have to decide on one object, because if you change your object, that by itself becomes a distraction, right? So for the time being, maybe you can just stick with concentration. And if it really becomes problematic in the sense that, you know, the breathing starts to stop or becomes too subtle to be aware of, then maybe you have to change, right? But if you change it too much, then it is a distraction by itself. Yeah, so there's kind of a technique when you go away, not for a weekend, but for 6 months, right? When you want to accomplish the concentration of calm abiding or samatha. So then for 6 months, you take one object from the beginning to the end. So in order to start with something like that, you have to experience and get some experience of various objects. What is you know, for you suitable. Yeah. But if you start at 6 month period, you have one object and you keep that until calm abiding has been achieved. Because every change of the object can be distraction by itself. Yeah. So see for yourself, if breathing still goes okay, then just stick with that for the time being, right?
Right. Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Next is Abelardo.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Geshe, for the wonderful class. Anger seems to be a very difficult emotion to counteract. A long time ago, I became convinced that I have to control anger and practice patience. But I have, particularly with one person who becomes very intense. I have a difficulty controlling my anger. My question is, if just being convinced is enough, or if there's something more one can do to remain in patience.
Just convinced is probably not enough. If it's just one time of being convinced is not enough, because if you're convinced on your cushion, then you get out of your cushion, you see the person and it's lost, right? So it means you're not really convinced. Yeah. So being convinced, you have to work on that quite some time. That's habituation that needs to be done, right? So with the power of habituation is possible. And then maybe temporarily you can avoid meeting that person or whatsoever, that you build up this force for yourself, and then slowly look at the person or look at the image of the person and see if you make progress before actually having a direct kind of meeting with the person. Yeah, so it's a slow process, right? Yeah, and by the power of habituation, it's possible. Even the worst person that will show up, not just for a minute, but the whole day in front of yourself, you were able to practice in one day, right? Yeah. Yeah, so it's Atisha, one of the great masters of Tibet, Indian master, as you know, who came to Tibet to spread the teachings. You know, Atisha had this attendant from India, was the most annoying person you can imagine. That whenever Atisha said, "Oh, what a nice temple," he said, "Oh, I don't think so," and it was his attendant 24/7. And then the Tibetan said, "Shall we give you a nice Tibetan? Get rid of this annoying person. We give you a nice person." He said, "No, this is my teacher of practicing patience," and he kept the same attendant. Yeah, so try. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's hard for me to spend time away because I'm talking about my girlfriend. So
I hope she's not listening today, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But try, you know, over time things will change. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Alessandro.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. If the person is close to you, then you have more opportunities, right, to practice. Yeah. If you're just in a cave, if you just oh yes, yeah. If you're just in a cave, then you know it's yeah, it's a different story. Yeah.
Well, like the next day after you know a conflict, we analyze it. We get back into peace. We reach conclusions, but then a week later, another round comes, and so I say, "So you're my teacher, you know," and she's humble too, and I'm her teacher. She accepts, and so anyway, yeah, we have faith that we'll get progress. Thank you.
Matter of time. Yeah. Okay.
Ali.
Hi everyone. Hi Geshe. Thank you for listening. Yeah, I guess I have sort of difficulty with the way that anger is framed as just an affliction and always an affliction. Because sometimes anger is a response to injustice.
Yeah.
I think that
yeah.
I think that a response doesn't need to like then be angry or violent or aggressive.
Yeah.
I think a response can still be skillful and compassionate. I would say that in those instances, anger does actually have a kind of wisdom within it that is alerting us to when something needs to change.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about what you have. Yeah, if you could speak to that. Maybe.
Yeah, so that means that practicing patience doesn't mean you're the doormat or something like that, right? That's not the key. That's not the whole. The thing is that, as you said yourself, if you take action when there's injustice and you have to correct a person, you can do that in various ways. You can get angry and try to scold at the person, or you keep your mind calm and talk with the person sincerely and solve the problem, right? So what is more constructive? The second one, you know? So practicing patience doesn't mean people can do whatever they like. I always take the example of His Holiness Dalai Lama, who is kind of for us a kind of a kind of a manifestation of these kind of trainings. And once we had a public talk in Bangalore organized, not in Bangalore, in another city close to Bangalore, and there was a lot of kind of formalities and politicians felicitating each other. It was like a waste of time, basically. But it went on and on and on, and then it was time for His Holiness to talk, and His Holiness, very calm, said, "Too much formality, waste of time." So that means His Holiness was very direct in that particular situation, but inside completely calm. You know, so that's, if there's injustice and you have to correct it, you know, you can do that in various ways. You get very annoyed and lose it, or you can be very calm and act. And that's exactly why this kind of trainings of emotional intelligence is very important among police forces, for example. Yeah, that prevents a lot of violence. Yeah, so that means, or in prisons, you know, like in Norway, the Harborne prison. It's a very interesting project that the guards are not being called guards, but guides, and they train much longer than an average guard in other prisons. But they know exactly how to deal with the people who's struggling with emotions, because criminals struggle with emotions, but they help them, right? So that means that it's kind of a mind training that is calmer, in more control, but the action is much more sophisticated. Yeah, so that's, you have to make a strong distinction between the mental factor anger, right, the mental factor patience, and the action that comes from either of those two. Yeah, you can have a very constructive action coming from patience, but being very direct and help the situation and help a person to correct. Yeah, so that's what we're talking about here. The mental attitude. Yeah. Yeah, hope it helps. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And then we have Maria.
Yeah, Maria.
Hi, thank you. My question is, when I was doing the analytical meditation, I could, and it was about anger, I could get a distance and analyze it, but I went the route of, and I think I'm used to doing this, is analyzing, why did I get angry? You know, yeah. what triggered me? Understand why. Yeah. And I think that's not the route that you're suggesting. In other words, a deeper understanding doesn't change the mind.
Yeah. So just knowing why you get angry is not enough. It helps you to understand the situation. But what does anger do? That we have to get insight into, right? Mm-hmm. So that anger produces a mind that is not clear, a mind that is unhappy, and has actually sometimes a wish of malice or a wish of harm, right? So that aspect of anger is not constructive. That we look upon. So that's, we see, oh, anger is something not to be followed. That kind of reason should be reached, right? Or that kind of conclusion should be reached. So not how anger arises, because that's interesting in an awareness meditation, of course, in effect relationships, but it's not going to solve the anger problem. Only to a certain extent, so that you can take more distance of it, right? But to transform it, you need this kind of analytical kind of reasoning eventually, right? So that means you understand the faults coming from anger and the benefits coming from practicing patience, and then you transform that in the sense you remember that throughout the day, these kind of analytical meditations, which brings a particular insight, and those insights you remember with mindfulness, right? And then the transformation happens. Yeah.
I have a follow-up. When my mind starts to go the understanding route, what do you suggest that I do to switch it to the other route?
Yeah, so that means you can start your analytical meditation and see how did that anger arise. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But then you stop that and then you just look at anger and see what does it do when it's there. Yeah, it already arose. And when it's there, what did it do to my mind? How did it disturb my mind? How did I lose my peace of mind? How did I say something wrong because I was not in control? And because of that, I start worrying about it the rest of the day or the night. Yeah, so you see the faults of anger has to be analyzed. Then you get convinced, oh, I don't want this anymore, right? So that's kind of a conclusion you have to reach. The more you do that, the more you get an intention not to follow it. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Right. And you have to put some effort, right? Nothing comes by itself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Maria.
That's it. Ali, you have one more? Okay.
One more in here. Okay.
One more here, and then we're done. Yeah. Always goes over time.
Thank you very much. And this is not, I'm not sure it's a question, it's more something that just now, that it's something that I'm reflecting on at the moment. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was involved in a situation where it's very interesting to hear to what you're saying, because before having the situation, I knew that I was going to be challenged by the situation. So while being there, while being negotiating kind of thing in the middle, I remained very calm, and I realized that I was able to be calmed. Then the thing came to an end that I felt that it was unfair, and it didn't have the result that I was searching.
Okay. You didn't take action or something like that.
It didn't happen the way I think it was supposed to happen. And then I came back home, and when I was home, I was so angry. Like during the talk, I was
should have
not
done something else.
And then the thing is, it's very interesting what you're saying, because when I came back home, I was going over and over and over again.
Beyond control.
And for beyond control. And for like 2 weeks, I was actually practicing on this emotion, like making the mental exercise of realizing what was going on with myself. And it was very destructive, and the people who were involved in the situation didn't even realize about it. Of course, because at the time. So for me, it's very interesting, this analytical. And I have been working on it, like just now that we were meditating on it. I think it's very useful when we take the time to analyze what it actually happens to ourselves when we get involved in this.
But also it's important to know that even though sometimes we keep patience and we have the best intentions, but the situation doesn't change according to our wish, because samsara is not perfect, right?
Exactly.
So then what you do, you have a good intention, you do the best thing according to your intention. If it doesn't work out, you just make a prayer and think, sorry, I tried to do my best, it didn't work out, I pray for the next time to let it work out. That's much more constructive than thinking, oh, I had a good intention, but it didn't work out, and then getting annoyed, right? Because we cannot change the world, so we always meet situations beyond our control. But we try to do our best, and if things don't work out, then it's kind of, okay, I tried, and make a prayer, may I be able to solve all these problems in the future. And that's constructive, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So try that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Together with practicing patience when you get annoyed. Yeah. Okay. You stop.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you so
That's
much.
the
Everybody.
end of how to meditate.
Yeah.
Well, apart from review and assessments.
I mean, we have to meditate not only until we die, but until enlightenment is achieved, right? Yeah. Okay. So let's dedicate then, as we said before, having done something virtuous today, and then we dedicate that in a particular direction, and that's help. Same with the prayer, with the last question, same thing. So dedicate that you be able to do more for self and others, right, in the near future, and then you create courses for that, right? That's what it is. Yeah. Dagi jine sabe gewa di tendang doa kunlang geba jesun lozan rabai tempe ningbo lingdu selje sho. May the glorious Guru's life belong and stable. May all beings equal in space have happiness. And may I,
without exception, accumulate merit and purify negativities,
and may be blessed to quickly attain Buddhahood. Janjo Samjo Rinpoche, Magye Panam Yegyoche, Yeba Nyamba Mepaya, Gone Gondu Bawarsho, Toni Tawa Rinpoche, Magye Panam Yegyoche, Yeba Nyamba Mepaya, Gone Gondu Bawarsho. Okay, thank you very much. And then enjoy your, discussion review session next week. And then we see each other again the week after that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Geshe.